Hello, everyone. This is Terry with Futures.io, and as always, I would like to thank you for joining us today. It is my pleasure to welcome Joe Gritz from Social Market Analytics and Rob Lifson from Lime Brokerage for today's webinar, Social Media Predictive Data for Traders, sponsored by Lime Brokerage. Throughout the webinar, if you have a question, please feel free to type them into the questions box. We'll do our best to answer them at the end of the event. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the Futures.io website within 24 to 48 hours. If you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, please do us a favor and give us a thumbs up on the video. And as always, please feel free to share, comment, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us a lot. Please bear with us due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of us are working from home, so you may hear children or animals in the background of this webinar or recording. For trading news, events, and information, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter using @Futures.io. And now, without further delay, I will hand it over to Rob, and you'll get the pop-up to share your screen again. All right, looking good. Choose all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Terry. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are happy to be part of the presentation here with Futures.io. We're also very happy to have Joe Gits from Social Market Analytics to show a little bit of the functionality that they have incorporated into some of our programs. My name is Rob Lifson. I'm one of the VPs of Business Development and Sales here at Lightspeed, which is a division of Lime Brokerage. We'll get started right away here. I don't want to sell too much here to you guys. We just want to show you what we have. Just quick disclosure here before we get started. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Nothing presented today should be construed as investment advice or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security or contract. Since we don't know everyone's investment objectives or risk tolerance, we're not endorsing any specific trading strategies. Security derivative futures trading involves substantial risk of loss, not suitable for all investors. Each investor must consider whether this is a suitable investment since you may lose all or more than your initial investment. Past performances, of course, is not indicative of future results. Lightspeed is a division of Lime Brokerage LLC. Lime Brokerage LLC is not affiliated with these third-party market commentators, educators, or service providers. Data, information, and material, the content, are provided for informational, educational purposes only. This content neither is nor should be construed as an offer, solicitation, or recommendation to buy or sell any securities or contracts. Any investment decisions made by the user through such use of content is solely based on the user's independent analysis and to take in consideration your financial circumstances, investment objectives, and risk tolerance. Lime Brokerage LLC does not endorse, offer, nor recommend any of the services or commentary provided, any of the market commentators, educationers, any information solely based on independent analysis of the user. Thank you. For more information on demo of the Lightspeed Trader software or the efutures platform or any of the other trading platforms that we offer, or questions about opening an account with Lightspeed, feel free to contact myself, Rob Lifson. The email is rlifson@limebrokerage.com. It's RLIVSON@limebrokerage.com. Certainly give a call into our main number and just start asking some questions. We're happy to assist, give some training sessions on the demo platforms as well. We're happy to have Joe Gits here from Social Market Analytics. Joe is the pioneer in the emergence and growth of quantitative trading systems. Prior to launching Social Market Analytics, he co-founded Quantitative Analytics, QA Direct, a market-leading provider of integrated database solutions for quantitative research and traders. So we're happy to have Joe show some of the integration that his company has made with some of our trading platforms to show how social analytics can be interpreted and utilized for, trading the markets and getting some trade ideas and seeing what the sentiment is around some of the symbols that you're seeing are driving the markets. So I'll certainly let Joe explain that in a more educational way than I can. So we're going to shift over the presentation to Joe, and he's going to start showing you what he has and what we've done with their company. So thanks to Futures.io for having us. And Joe, please take it away and let's get started.
Thank you very much, Rob. First, I'd like to say thank you to Futures.io for having me here, and I really appreciate it. And just on a side note, I am working from home, so you will probably hear kids and pets in the background, so you have to excuse me for that. So again, thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to be here. What I hope to do today is kind of walk you through the genesis of the company and how we create our data, how we listen to investors on Twitter, and how we incorporated this content into some unique widgets that are available on the Lime Lightspeed platform. At any point in time, if you guys have some questions, I'll stop kind of halfway through and take some, but please put them out there. I'm always happy to answer those questions, and it certainly makes the presentation more interesting. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with alternative data in finance. 80% of new content being created is what's traditionally called alt data, which is often referred to as textual data. So the amount of content that is growing in this space is exponential, and the use in finance is growing exponentially as well, and I'll show you some of those slides. So if you look at the same traditional data in the same ways, you're going to get the same results. So that's really what our customers are using our data for, is to look at data in those new ways. How we created and patented a social media framework, so how we actually think about ingesting specifically Twitter and turning that data into signals. What social media can offer for every investor. Why would you use social media, specifically Twitter, in your investment process? And then how to use the widgets on Lightspeed, on the Lightspeed Trader, and on the efutures platform. We put a lot of work in various focus groups on designing these widgets, and I think they really provide some unique perspectives on the conversation that's happening on the social media, in social media. So I'm gonna. What's nice about this particular slide is a couple of years ago, I really needed this slide so that people could understand the importance of Twitter in the financial community. And this slide is probably on the verge of being removed from the deck because everybody knows Twitter. Everybody knows there are 850 million tweets a day, goes up to 1 billion sometimes on high news days. And people are talking about securities, products, market moving information, COVID-19, anything that's moving markets or anything that's happening in the world is going to be discussed on Twitter first. As an example, when the Iranian general Soleimani was assassinated, it showed up 7 minutes on Twitter before it showed up on Bloomberg. So you're going to see news breaking on Twitter quicker than any other source in the world. And the reason for this slide is to show the highlighted spaces, so the red spaces. Those correspond to high volumes of Twitter. And as you can probably guess, they also correspond to the financial centers across the world. So you're going to see that tweets are coming about companies, products, events, and they're coming from the market moving places of information in the world. So the end result of this is that social media is disrupting capital markets. So when people get information on Twitter or they see something happening for a particular company, they're reacting quicker than you would see it from traditional news sources, and that's disruptive. That new source of information is disruptive to the capital markets. Now, I'm going to date myself, but when I first started my career, I was in the S&P pits in Chicago, and prior to a big move, some of the times you could feel the energy in the pit change, either expand or louder, or just people more active. What I feel like, and what made me start social market analytics, is that Twitter is the new feeling of the pit. You see discussions increase on particular securities. You see mentions increase on particular securities. And that leads at a statistically significant level to changes in futures prices or in equity prices or in any asset class that you want to be talking about. So this is a disruptive technology that's slowly being adopted because of how difficult it is to use. It's a lot of information. It has to be parsed. It has to be processed quickly. And the ability of computers to process this in real time and the ability of people to listen to Twitter in real time has really caused a disruptive force. How has this disruptive force worked its way into the financial markets? And this is a great slide because it shows the growth. And this slide stops in 17, but the exponential growth has increased. So the number of alternative data analysts, and alternative data analyst is someone that will look at data a little bit differently than maybe price to book, cash flow, expected earnings as quintiles, typically has some natural language processing capabilities, neural nets, machine learning, artificial intelligence all play into that. And many universities are starting programs in this. And then the number of investment funds employing alternative data analysts. Now, I saw a quote recently that said of the firms that are not using alternative data right now, somewhere around 90% of those firms plan on using alternative data in the near future. and hiring alternative data analysts. So this is growing in importance, it's growing in availability, and it's something that firms are using in both real time and other time frames. So what do we do? Well, we are one of the few licensed partners of Twitter. We have access to the full Twitter fire hose, and we pull out information on securities, companies, topics that we're interested in. You got to talk about it, but right now we're publishing and tracking metrics on COVID-19, mentions, correlations to security prices. So we listen to the full Twitter fire hose, and we turn that data into quantitative signals. So we take this unstructured data, this textual data, and we turn it into something that can be used by the investment community. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we actually do that in a second. But can I stop here to see if there are any questions?
At the moment, no.
Okay. All right. So I talked a little bit on the last slide about what we do, and now I'm going to talk about how we do it and the specific impact for you as traders. So we built and patented a 3-component system, and the extractor is really the key component. So we're listening to the full Twitter fire hose, and we're pulling off information about securities, companies, products. We call those topics. So Tesla Motors would be a topic. Under Tesla Motors, we would obviously have the ticker symbol. We would have Solar City. We would have Elon Musk. We'd have Model X. We would have a knot for Nikolai Tesla. And so as these tweets come in and they're scored, they go through the extractor, and that publishes out real-time tweet scores. And then it also goes into an archive that's used in the evaluator. And the evaluator does a couple different things. So in 850 million tweets a day, many of those tweets don't talk about, the vast majority of those tweets don't talk about securities or companies. The evaluator will take 2 different dimensions on this data. One is it'll look at the accounts. And the account information and the IP around the account information is something that we've really only exposed to on the Lightspeed Trader, and I'll explain that in a second. But we score anyone that's ever tweeted about a security going back the last 10 years. So if any of you guys have tweeted about a security and tagged it to any of the identifiers or company names that we can identify to a particular security, that tweet is scored and it's put into metrics, as well as the account is scored. So we have developed a 12-factor algorithm that allows us to score each individual account. So we don't use number of followers, but we use how often people are retweeted, how often people are commented on. One of the metrics that we use is how accurate they are. So we look at sentiment scores for a particular account, and we'll talk more about this later. And then we look at subsequent securities, returns. So if someone is positive about Apple, we'll look at the subsequent performance of Apple and determine whether or not this person is more accurate than the average person. So the evaluator looks at the account and where that tweet came from, and then it scores that tweet with proprietary natural language processing. What we're determining is whether or not someone is talking positively about that particular security, whether they're talking negatively about that particular security, and what level of strength. So we score every tweet in real time from -1 to +1 out to 4 decimal places. And then we calculate a bunch of metrics that describe the current conversation on a standard normal curve. So if you look at traditional metrics, if you look at volume, if you look at price to book, price to cash flow, any of the traditional metrics, you're gonna get that data usually as a standalone. Volume, you're gonna see the top securities have the highest volume. What we identify pretty early on is when a conversation for a particular security gets significantly more positive than normal or significantly more negative than normal, that you start seeing that predictive power. So what we've done is we've basically created a series of Z-scores. So we're looking at the current conversation over the last 24 hours, exponentially weighted, compared to a 20-day baseline, and we're calculating those Z-scores. So what we're showing on this particular chart is that standard normal curve, and our S-score is where that conversation stands relative to historical conversation. So is the current conversation for company XYZ 2 standard deviations more positive than normal, or 2 standard deviations more negative than normal, just as an example. If it is, that conversation is more positive than 98.6% of prior conversations, or more negative than 98.6% of prior conversations. As a trader, that's how you use the data. So the S-score crosses above 2. That means that security is being spoken about on Twitter a lot more positively than normal, and that statistically leads to higher returns. A lot of times, as knowledgeable traders that you guys are, you're going to know, oh, this is an earnings conversation. They just crushed their earnings, or this was an earnings miss, or maybe their new product just got launched. But there are times when the conversation gets a lot more positive, maybe on a more nuanced level. So, for example, someone is complaining about the side effect of a drug that they're seeing, and that goes viral on Twitter. Or maybe people are talking about some regulatory or legal information that just came out on Twitter. So there are many different types of conversations that are happening on Twitter outside of the obvious one that can provide you an opportunity to trade a new security and give you a directional indication on that security. So this chart is showing a standard normal curve with your Z-scores, and that is really the core metric that we publish for our hedge fund customers and is available on the Lightspeed platform. Let me do the next slide here. So I kind of got into this a little bit, but how can social media affect you as a trader or you as an investor? It's a leading indicator of security performance. So if you look at subsequent returns, when securities have a positive S-score or higher S-score, those securities go out to perform at a statistically significant level. They go out to outperform, and we have statistics that go 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. If that conversation is significantly more negative than normal, those securities go on to underperform at a statistically significant level. So it is a leading indicator. And we've been doing this. Our first out-of-sample poll was December 1st of 2011, and we've been carrying that data out of sample ever since. And you see that time and again in the return characteristics and the return numbers that we publish on a regular basis. Securities being discussed, I already talked about that. So the second bullet point, it's an indicator of price movement in securities. New trading ideas. So as professional traders, you guys are working on your trading plan on a daily basis, and you have securities that might have moving events, or you have securities that you trade on a regular basis because you have a good feel for them. What you're going to see in the widgets that we show you shortly is social media brings new ideas to the table. And maybe securities that you haven't traded before, or sentiment is moving for particular securities. So it can help you find new securities to trade. And we believe as a company that can help you trade those better. Position monitoring, that's a no-brainer. Since I discussed at the very first point that Twitter is a source of breaking news, you can monitor your positions with social media. So you can put in on TweetDeck or on any platform to show you tweets about your particular company, and you tweets on 2,100 stocks. We generate signals on a daily basis on about 2,100 active stocks. So odds are securities that you're trading are going to be discussed on social media. So it gives you information, breaking information for securities that you may want to have a position in. And then trade execution. So we have a number of our customers who are execution firms or marketers, and they use our data to formulate bids and ask and help them execute and get better than VWAP on a daily basis. So we have a number of customers that are using it. And this is just a sprinkling of what social media can offer, from the obvious benefits of a community. So if you wanted to get on Twitter and start tweeting about ideas that you may want to have, you'll get a pretty constructive and healthy communication going on Twitter and other social media platforms. So we've been working for quite a while with the Lightspeed guys to make this offering truly unique and powerful. And so there are 5 different types of widgets that we've implemented on this platform, all providing unique information. And we feel that they're ideally suited. So we're going to talk a little bit about top 10 sentiment, bottom 10 sentiment. I'm going to show you visuals for the account accurate long, account accurate short, and then kind of a dashboard for individual securities. And I really like the account accurate ones, and I think those are really powerful. So one of the Lightspeed widgets that we've worked with the Lightspeed team to build is a top 10 sentiment table. Okay, so you can see on the left, we're going to go down the individual tabs, and I'm going to show you how we've implemented it and what the actual numbers mean. And I think you guys will find that pretty compelling. So the top 10 sentiment is in a real-time view, the securities that currently have a sentiment in the top 10 of our overall universe. All right, so these are the securities that are being discussed relatively more positive than any other security on Twitter. So when I was taking those Z-scores, those are all for individual securities. So for example, if we're looking at Western Digital, number 5, if we're looking at Western Digital, all the metrics that we're creating are specific to Western Digital. And so the current conversation on Western Digital is 4.01 standard deviation more positive than normal. That's 99 more positive than 99% of prior conversations. So this is updated on a real-time basis, and it's showing you in real time securities that people are talking about a lot more positively than normal. So it gives you securities that perhaps you can trade options on, equities on, that have a strong statistical tendency to move higher over a period of time. So S score is that Z score, that standard normal curve I was telling you a little bit about earlier. S volume are tweets after we've done our filtering. So from those accounts that I told you had the high enough credibility score, that's the number of tweets that we're using in this particular metric at this point in time to calculate that score. And then SV score is volume, is a Z score of volume. So is the volume on that particular security a lot higher? Twitter volume, not trade volume. Twitter volume a lot higher than it normally is. You know, so for example, Zoom is all over the news right now, and I'm not sure when we took the snapshot, but the current conversation was 3.9 standard deviations more positive than normal, with a volume of tweets from those certified accounts 3.5 standard deviations higher than normal. So people were talking very bullish about Zoom, and at that point in time. Okay, so this is updated real time. You can click on it, and it will allow you to see a list of securities that maybe you should explore for trading opportunities. And we'll look at this later, but if you click on these are hyperlinked to sentiment by symbol, so you can do more of an exploration. Now, so if I'm showing you top 10 sentiment, the other widget, bottom 10 sentiment, these are the opposite. These are the current dogs in terms of Twitter conversation. So people are talking a lot more negatively about these securities than they have talked traditionally. All right, so if you look at Oracle Corporation, number 2, almost 4 standard deviations more negative than normal. Maybe they missed earnings. Maybe something happened with the supply. This could be a supply chain issue. The current conversation is a lot more negative than normal, with volume that was higher than normal, 2.5 standard deviations higher than normal. This is the opposite of what we saw in the top 10 sentiment. So these are the stocks that are maybe ripe for a short opportunity. Obviously, explore them and put them into your overall trading system. This isn't a recommendation, but these are securities that you should talk about, that you should look at in terms of people are talking a lot more negatively. What's funny, Pure One shows up in there a lot. Not a buy or sell recommendation. All right. These are my favorite widgets. These are the ones that I think they're all good, but these are some of my favorites. This one looks at only the accounts that have been proven to be most accurate over the last year for these particular securities, and if they're tweeting about those securities, what is the overall view of those accurate accounts on that particular security? So these are the guys that have statistically shown they're better than the average bear, and they are accurate. So for example, if we're looking at Salesforce, number 3, 73%, so there are 15 of these accurate accounts currently talking about Salesforce. 73% of those accounts are positive on Salesforce with their overall sentiment. 13% are negative, and the rest are neutral. This is looking at a one-day holding period, but there are a number of periods here. So if you look down at the bottom, it's a 1-day, 2-day, 1 week, and 1 month holding period, and you'll see these numbers change. So this, again, I believe this is updated daily. I'm not quite sure. I'll follow up on that. But Microchip Technology, 80% of the accurate accounts that are talking about that particular security are positive, and there are no negatives, and the rest are neutral. So the guys that are, you know what I kind of look at, you can look at services that rate analysts in terms of their accuracy. This is analyst rating for Twitter. Of the people that are tweeting, pick the most accurate. What are they saying about these particular securities? Any questions so far, guys? Okay.
Sorry, not at the moment.
Okay, great. Accurate account short side. Not the best for a Twitter presentation, but at this point in time, Twitter was 36% of the accurate accounts were positive on Twitter, 45% were negative, and the spread is neutral. So at this particular day, Twitter, Arrowhead Research, Nike, and Amarin Corporation were stocks that the most accurate accounts were talking specifically negatively about those securities. Again, these are widgets that you can click on, and they will go into what we call the sentiment by symbol sheet. And this is a sheet that shows you just a little bit more information on the sentiment. It's basically a sentiment snapshot, and it's showing you S-score, which is our standard normal curve representation that we were talking about a little bit earlier. SV score, again, that's volume for that security relative to its own historical Twitter volume. S volume is number of tweets from one of those from all the certified accounts at that particular time period. So this is the Apple. There were 248 tweets during that one snapshot time period. S dispersion is important because it shows you what percentage of the tweets are coming from unique accounts. So for Apple at this particular time period, 54% of the tweets were coming from unique accounts. So that means that each account is sending out almost 2 tweets. So you're not going to see, what you don't want to see is a very low dispersion, because that means most of the tweets are coming from one individual account. And one of the things that we try and do when we score our accounts, and in our certified universe, there are over 100,000 accounts that have scored high enough to be included in our metrics going forward. But if we see someone that's constantly spamming a thread, we'll typically block those guys going forward. And then date and time is the time that particular snapshot was taken. The speedometer tells you the sentiment based in the different bands. So for this particular case, it was a negative 1.49, and it was a negative sentiment, slightly negative, not extremely negative, with the overall price change of negative 0.79. And then various time periods of charts. So 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, and a year. So the top half of that particular chart is sentiment, and obviously green is positive sentiment, red is negative sentiment. The ranges are here. Most conversations for most securities hover around normal level, and you'll see, as an example, you'll see about 100 stocks out of the S&P 500 have a 2 or higher. About 75 have a negative 2 or lower, maybe slightly less than that. So you do see a significant number of securities that have sentiment moving outside of a normal level conversation. But because of the way we calculate our metrics, most sentiment is neutral at most time periods. And then below is Twitter volume, tweet volume. Again, not trading volume. The red corresponds to a negative change in sentiment during that time period, and the green is a positive change in sentiment in that particular time period. And this is all updated real time. If you click on the little info button, that pops out and gives you, and I'll show you an example of that in a slide, that gives you more information about that particular metric and how you can use that metric. Here's a real desktop application. So in Lightspeed, you could set up your own front end. And so here are some of the widgets implemented in real time on the desktop application. So here you see our S-score and volume. Here you see these are your negative sentiments, your most positive sentiments. Then you have your speedometer, and then your accurate account longs and accurate account shorts, as well as your individual pricing. So this is fully integrated. It can be used with your configuration that you have set up on the platform, and these widgets will update for you in real time. And then we've been discussing equities up until this point. We obviously have implemented a full set of futures, so you can see this is a much more of your traditional heat map example, and this is on the efutures front end. This heat map is a little bit different in that a normal heat map will show volume, trade volume for the size of the box. In this particular case, we're showing relative Twitter volume in the box. So in this case, we're looking at yen futures, and on that particular day, relative to its normal volume, it has a very high volume with a positive sentiment. So it updates every minute. You see the values here, and then green and red represents your traditional sentiment, positive or negative, and then the size of the box is relative tweet volume. And then you can click on the sentiment, and you see more detailed information on that. So this is a little bit different view, but it gives you in one page, in this case, all the individual futures. And these topic models are a lot more interesting. There's a lot more slang associated with these. We put individual contracts, but many times on Twitter, they'll just talk about heating oil, or they'll just talk about corn futures. So it's an interesting topic model, but when you aggregate all those together, you get a solid signal. So if you were clicking on any of the information buttons, this is the page that you would see on the platform. So it goes into very significant detail on how to use sentiment, how to use tweet volume, what the colors of the boxes mean, and it's very intuitive once you get comfortable with it. If it's high positive, those securities tend to move higher. If it's negative, those securities tend to move lower. And if you would like, if you go to socialmarketanalytics.com, you'll see a bunch of research papers there, and you can do a lot more research and look at some of the predictive nature of the data. Those papers are free to download, so please knock yourself out if you want to see those. So it's a real-time implementation. All of those widgets are updating in real time. We believe, and the statistics have shown, that this data can help you find new securities to trade and help you trade better. I hope there are questions.
Yes, there is. Give me 1 second.
All right. And again, I want to thank you guys. I thanked our host for having me, but I really want to thank all the attendees for coming as well. I appreciate you guys being here and showing some interest in this type of data.
How do you eliminate tweets that are created by bots?
Great question. So as I mentioned, we have about 100,000 accounts that are in our certified universe. We do not automatically eliminate bot tweets because there are some bots that are actually pretty good. Most of the bots that we have included in our metrics are technical analysis types of bots, so cross above moving averages, cross below moving averages, RSI, Bollinger Bands, stochastics. So those bots are still included. Identification of bots is a pretty straightforward process. One of the algorithms that we use helps us to identify bots. So if you think about it, the easiest way to look at a bot is number of tweets. I mean, you and I and the rest of the world has other things to do besides tweet. So that's an easy way to do it. The standard deviation of time that these particular tweets come out, so that a lot of them are pretty standard on that. Standard references, references to accounts that have other characteristics associated with them. So we identify bots, we evaluate them a little bit differently than we do other individual accounts, but those are algorithms that we have created, and we have put a lot of work into identifying those. But again, there are some really good bots that are included in our metrics, but most bots we eliminate pretty quickly. We have algorithms that we've developed over time with our machine learning that identifies those.
Okay. Do you reveal the ID of those accurate accounts?
We do not, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is I don't want to alter behavior. So we do not. I know who they are. Some of them are very good. Wall Street Jesus is one of them. He's really good. He talks about options. He's good. That's just one example. I don't know if I don't know where he sits in the ranking right now, but he's someone that is pretty good. But no, we don't generally
Okay.
release that because we don't want to alter behavior.
Okay, and that actually just answered his second question. So awesome, thank you. That's all the questions at the moment.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I already hit that slide. I really appreciate your time, guys. And if there are no other questions, then I think we can conclude.
Okay. Do you have a contact slide, or is there a contact slide for Lime?
Rob,
Looks-
you can reach me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Joe G at socialmarketanalytics.com.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Joe G, Joeg at socialmarketanalytics.com. And you can get me from the website as well.
Okay. And then I'm just going to grab it real quick. Okay, and then you can also go to Lime Brokerage website there in the browser and contact them as well. All right, guys, thank you for the webinar today, for the information, and for spending some time with us this evening.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, guys. Everyone have a good evening. Everyone
Thank you very much. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Take
You're
care,
welcome.
everyone.
Thank you.